In this Tableau session, we're going to be building histograms. This is something that you learned in Chapter 2, and we might do a couple other neat little things with Tableau. So I downloaded this sheet, or you should be able to download this text file in D2L in the Contents section under PowerPoints and Other. So go ahead and download that if you haven't downloaded it already. Open it. And this is a file that gives the average height of men and women from most of the countries in the world from 1896 to 1996, 100 years of data, which means that what? This is time series data. This is not cross-sectional data. So let's take a look at the first few columns here. In the first column, you have the country. The second column is ISO. It's a type of country code given by the International Standardization Organization. Third column is the gender, male or female. Fourth column is the year of birth. Fifth column is the height, the average height of that country at the age of 18 for those of people born in 1896. So actually, the person's height was taken in 1914. Okay? These last two columns of data, do not worry about. Okay? So looking at the data, which country born in what year has the shortest average height of women? How about the tallest average height of men? Not really easy to figure out. Okay? One way we can actually figure this out pretty quickly and pretty easily and visually pleasing is through Tableau. So let's go ahead and open that. So you should have already downloaded this and installed it on your computer. Take a few seconds to open up. And this is a text file, okay? What I had been reading it in was a notepad. And we're gonna go ahead and upload the file. We're gonna connect the file with Tableau. So click on text file. And if it doesn't pop up, this file pop up, you're gonna have to find out where it downloaded on your computer from D2L. Okay. So you should now see a table of data in a little cleaner format with the headers. So let's do a couple things before we start doing some visualizations. Let's make a change to the date field. Okay, so on the pound sign, let's change this from number whole to date. Now previously, Tableau recognized it as a number. Now it does not recognize it as a number. It recognizes it as a year of birth because of these forward slashes. So it recognizes it as January 1st, 1986. And that's going to have a little bit of bearing, what you're going to see in a few minutes. Next thing we want to do, unless you were born outside of the US, mean height in centimeters has very little intuition for you in determining actually just how tall somebody is. Okay? What is more intuitive for you? For me, probably feet. So let's go ahead and transform this variable. So the down arrow, click on Create Calculated Field. In place of calculation 1, let's change it to mean height in feet. Okay. So the value is going to be given to us in centimeters, and we have to transform it to feet. The intermediary unit between centimeters and feet is what? Inches. Okay. So we have to ask ourselves how many centimeters in an inch and divide that amount out. That's 2.54, okay? 2.54 centimeters in an inch. And the last part is going from inches to feet. Okay, we're going to have to divide out 12 inches for every foot. Okay. So Tableau lets us know right here that all the operation in our argument up here is valid. We can go ahead and click OK. So now you can see a new column, a new variable of data has been created. It transformed every measure of mean height in centimeters to the measure in feet. Okay, so now we're ready to go ahead and start a visualization. Lower left-hand side, click on Sheet 1. Okay, let me explain a few things before we do get started. In the left-hand column, in the Data tab, you have two different parts. You have dimensions and you have measures. Dimensions are what Tableau recognizes as non-quantitative fields. Okay, so if we go back to the table, it recognizes that these first 4 columns here are non-quantitative, and it recognizes them as dimensions. And these last 4, it recognizes as quantitative. It scans down each column and it sees these numbers here in strictly whole number, in numeric form. And that's where you will find the designation of these measures: mean height centimeters, mean height feet, and the last 2 measures of data. So let's go ahead and build a simple visualization. In the measure section, go ahead and click on mean height feet, drag it and drop it 2 columns. And let me just say this quickly: if you do mess up on any move, okay, all you have to do is hit the back arrow and Tableau will reset what you just did. Okay, so again, drag and drop mean height of feet to the column shelf. Okay, so we have a column shelf and we have a row shelf. So you can see some mean height in feet. What does this mean? So by default, Tableau sums up the heights of all the data in the column, okay, all the numbers in the column. In this case, it's the heights of all the countries over time. Okay. By default, Tableau does this. So in the context of our data, if we summed up that entire column, the entire summation of mean height of feet over 100-year time period of several hundred countries is 215,000 feet. Okay? That number means really nothing to us. We want to change that to something that does have some meaning to us, and that would be average. So click this down arrow. Okay, this is called a pill right here. Click that down arrow, scroll down to measure sum, and instead of sum, change it to average. Okay, now if we hover over this horizontal bar, we'll see the average mean height of all the countries over the past 100 years, both male and female, at 5.338. Okay, so let's do a little bit more with this. Let's drill down and separate it by sex. So in the dimensions section, go ahead, drag and drop sex to the row shelf. Okay, and now Tableau breaks it down height by men and women. Okay, men at 5.5, women at 5.15. Let's make this a little easier on the eyes and separate these 2 categories by color. So let's, in the dimension sections, move, drag and drop sex to color. Okay. And men are now designated with the color blue, women with the color orange. Let's drill down a little bit more and separate by country, that is for each gender. in dimensions, drag country to the row shelf to the right of sex. And if we scroll down, this is men right here, everything in blue of all the countries. If we scroll down, we will find women. Okay, if we scroll over one of the bars, it'll tell us the average height over 100 years for that respective country. Let's go ahead and sort this from high to low. So in the upper toolbar, you'll see a descending button, by average mean height. Click on that. And at the top, we have Iceland, having the tallest average height for men over the past 100 years. How about for women? Scroll down, and we'll also find Iceland with an average height of 5.417 feet. Another thing, anytime we want to see the data that's underpinning any particular table, we can click on the View Data icon, and we will see that data. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and open up a new worksheet. In the lower left section, click where this Add Worksheet is, and let's build a histogram. So, measure section. We have mean height of feet as one of our measures. And in order to build a histogram, we have to artificially construct categories of heights. Okay? If you remember, in a previous lecture, we had mentioned how qualitative data usually has a natural separation, whereas quantitative data usually needs to be artificially constructed. Its widths, its categories, its bins. So that's what we're going to do right now. So click the down arrow and scroll down to Create Bins. So each bin is going to have a width. Okay, it's going to have a width. Tableau, by default, came up with artificially constructed width of 0.019 feet. Okay, let's go ahead and change this to 0.1. Okay, don't worry about how I came up with that. That's really not important for you at this time to know, but just change it to 0.1 as the width of the bin, the size of the bin, as Tableau would call it. Click OK. And now you see a new variable is created in dimensions, mean height of feet in bins, because we have now transformed it from a quantitative variable to a qualitative because it has categories. Okay? Any categorical variable is called a qualitative variable. So let's go ahead and move this, drag and drop it to columns. Okay, and we have the different bins. Okay, again, the width was 0.1. So we have a range from 4.6 all the way to 5.9. Let's go ahead and drag country to row shelf. So before we make the next move, I want to explain to you what's going to be happening. So Tableau goes ahead, and if Afghanistan has an average height for a particular year of somewhere, say, between 4.7 and 4.8, not including 4.8, up to but including 4.8, it'll put a number 1 here, count it with a number 1. Okay, so when we build histograms, if you remember, we're doing a count, or what's called a frequency, for the different categories. So let's go ahead and do a count on all of these. countries. So hit the down arrow, scroll down to measure, and click on count distinct. And again, Tableau went ahead, did a count of every country and the height, and came up with this kind of neat histogram. Okay. So if we scroll over, we can see that there's 90, let's say 5.2, the tallest vertical bar. Mean height of 5.2, between 5.2 and up to but not including 5.3, 193 countries for a particular year fall in this category. So would you say that this distribution is normally distributed, skewed? Most likely normal distribution, a symmetric distribution. So let's go ahead and separate by gender. So go ahead and drag sex to columns. Okay. Not a great visual representation. Let's go ahead and move it down to rows, okay, before country. Okay. A little bit better. So on the top histogram, we have a distribution of the average heights of men. And in the bottom, we have a distribution of women. Okay. Let's color this a little bit, drag sex to color. So this doesn't identify which countries are in each category. Okay, it just gives us the actual count. You kind of need to see which countries are located in the vertical bars on each of these two histograms. So we can do that. If we drag from the Dimensions tab, if we drag country to detail, now hover over any one of the vertical bars and you'll see the countries that are in that category. I think it looks a little better if we take this gender pill and remove it from the canvas. Anytime you do that, just go ahead, drag and drop it to this area. Okay. Or you could hit the down arrow and click remove. Okay, either one works. Okay. So now, again, scroll over any of the vertical bars, we can see the actual countries in the categories. Okay. So what countries had the shortest height of women? Bangladesh, Bolivia, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala. How about for women? Czech Republic, Estonia, Iceland was in there, of course. So this is over a country's average over all 100 years of time, 1896 to 1996. What if we wanted to see them year by year? Okay. How might those distributions be trending year by year? Let's do that. So if we go ahead in the Dimensions section, drag year of birth to pages, it might take a second or two to populate because it's separating out each year and assigning each year to a page. Okay, so in the upper right corner, you will see that these two distributions, the men's and the women's distributions, are for 1896, the people born in 1896. Okay. If we scroll over the tallest women, we will see Iceland in 1896, Norway, Sweden, and the US. Okay. What about for men? Canada, Estonia, Norway, also the US. Let's see how the distribution looks in 1897. So in the upper right section, click this forward arrow and advance it to 1897. You can see the distribution change slightly. How about 1898? Also changed. 1899 changed as well for both men and women. And 1900. Okay. Let's make Tableau do the work by automating it with a play button. So in this right side here, hit this play button, and you will see it change year to year. 1904, 1905, 1906, 1907, 1908. Okay. We can slow it down or we can speed it up. 1 bar slow down. Currently we're at 2 bars. 1 bar is a little bit slower. 3 bars is faster. Okay, so let's go ahead and speed it up a little bit. Okay, so as you can see, as the years progress, the distribution moves to the right. Okay. Average height is increasing as the years move on. Evolution, more nutrients in food, selection of partners, health advances. Okay. Tableau helps us to see this trend. Again, if we hit the play button, distribution of both men and women are moving to the right. Now, once it hits the last year, 1996, the last year of birth, 1996, you will see something kind of unusual versus where it started from. The distribution in 1896 for men is a little more spread out. Okay, the dispersion's a little wider. So you see 1996 versus 1896. Not as dispersed. We'll inspect that a little bit more, probably in the next session of Tableau. Let's go ahead and name this visualization. On the lower left area, double click on sheet 2, and let's change this to histograms, and hit enter. One last thing we're going to do with this visualization is to see how average height varies on a world map. So go ahead, open a new worksheet. In the measures section, let's drag mean height of feet to colors. Okay. Again, by default, Tableau sums up the data. We want average, so click on the down arrow, scroll down to measure sum, change it to average. In dimensions, let's move country to details. And if you scroll over any of these boxes, you can see the average mean height of the respective country. Dark blue is taller versus light blue being shorter. Okay. Not really an impressive visualization, so let's impress a little bit here. So go to Show Me and scroll down to this icon of world map. And now we have a world map of heights. Okay. The darker the blue, the taller the average height of a country, average height of country over the past 100 years. Let's change the color pattern a little bit to make it a little more distinct between tall versus short. So click on Colors, Edit Colors, and let's scroll down and change it to red, blue, and white diverging. And instead of 5 steps, let's make it a little more, give a little more variation. Let's make it 8 steps. And click OK. Now you can see a little more distinction between the taller countries versus the shorter countries in height. Red obviously being the shorter. So let's see. Peru, Ecuador, Mexico, Guatemala, Indonesia has a very much shorter average height versus the US, Sweden, Iceland, Norway, a lot of Northern European countries. What about over time? Okay, this is over an average over 100 years, an aggregate of over 100 years. Let's take a look at it year by year. Again, in dimensions section, move year of birth to pages. Year of birth to pages. And click on Show Me to get rid of that. Okay. And these are the average heights for 1896 for most of the countries in the world, blue being taller. So Sweden, Norway, the US, Australia, these were the taller countries more than 100 years ago. South America, Central America, parts of Asia, shorter. Advance it over time. And again, you'll see that the world is getting taller. Let's speed this up. Countries start to move out of the red to the orange, and eventually most of them are in the blue by the 1960s through the 1970s, and finally in the 1990s. Okay, so pretty neat visualization. Let's call this world height map over time. World height map over time. Actually, let's call this the histograms. Let's rename the histograms as well over time. Okay, so we have three visualizations. Sheet 1, sheet 2 are the histograms, sheet 3 is the world map. Let's create a dashboard with the last two visualizations. So click on Dashboard, New Dashboard, and go ahead, if you hover over any of these, you'll see the actual visualization. Go ahead and drag and drop histograms anywhere on the canvas. Okay, it'll populate the entire canvas. Now we're going to go ahead and to the right of the histograms, we're going to drag and drop world height map. Okay, histogram is kind of hoarding the space. Let's cut it down a little bit, give the world map a little bit of equal real estate. And these are the two most recent visualizations that we built. Now we can go ahead and in sequence play them, and it orchestrates at the same time. So let's do this quickly. 1896, over time, the histogram moves to the right. Colors of the map change from red to eventually blue. In 1960, 1970s, 1980s, and the 1990s. Okay. So again, these were the year of births for the subjects of the heights that were measured. 18 years after the year of birth those heights were taken, those measurements were taken. So the last year data was actually 2014. So this data is about 4 years old. Okay, let's go ahead, save the file. Save file as whatever you want. And you are good to go for this visualization. Have a nice day.